Now, we're going to talk about consent. And vandalism of art, for instance, is definitely not consensual. Artists have worked really hard to produce these pieces for all of us to enjoy. And so here to start us off on the topic of consent, and then I'm going to take it from there, is Dom. He is Burning Man's communications manager, and he's been back there managing the live stream. So here he is, Dom.
Hi, guys. I'm really looking forward to something called robococking this year. I don't know if you're all familiar with it. It's when you take your pants off and put a pair of robot heart never mind. What are we talking? Consent. Yeah. Trippy is going to talk a little bit about some other aspects of consent, but I, as a communications manager, am most interested in how we kind of build our culture around media consent. A lot of people often think about consent and think of sexual assault or touch of a physical nature, but on Playa you all see people with cameras everywhere. As part of our media proposal process, professional media have to go through a process internally. Year-round, we review people's applications, and we make it very clear to professional media that when you're on Playa, you have to get people's permission to take their photos or to shoot video. And getting permission to shoot someone's photo does not necessarily mean you have permission to post that later on. We try our best to require folks to have written permission. If you can get that from people on Playa, that's preferred. But, you know, a lot of people then come to us and say, well, how am I supposed to do that in the moment? So much of the magic on Playa is getting things happening as they, as they develop. But I promise you, people will be much happier when you ask them to take their photo before you do. And then after the event, as you're putting your things together, getting that second round of permission from people. So we really need your help with this. A lot of people come to the event and shoot for personal use, not professional use, and post photos or video as part of fundraiser videos. I know a lot of you guys have social media presences for your camps. We'd really appreciate it if you talk to your folks about making sure they get permissions. And if you see people on Playa taking photos or video of other folks, and something feels off, it probably is. Media in Black Rock City are supposed to have camera tags. If you see a lot of professional equipment running around the Playa and people being invasive, please come to Media Mecca in Center Camp, let us know about it, and also tell that person to fuck off. That works too. So yeah, consent it spans well beyond sexual assault and sexual relations awareness. So that's just one thing that we wanted you to be aware of. Thanks. Yes. Robococking this year.
All right, so I'm going to pick it up from there and talk a little bit more about other forms of consent. So why am I talking about this? Why? So this has been a really big topic in our culture, our larger culture, since the burn or a little bit before that. And also, many Burning Man regionals have been struggling with this. There have been some pretty intense situations happening in some regionals around sexual assault issues, and a lot of exploration in the regional network in general around codes of conduct, around how to handle community members who aren't participating in a way that is consensual or okay with other folks. So I wanted to bring it up here because you are leaders, and you represent thousands of citizens of Black Rock City. All of us do. And I want to ask, how consensual of a place is your camp? And just to have that self-reflection for your campers and also for folks who are interacting, engaging with you in your public areas. So some other forms of consent, Dom touched on photography and video. Some other forms are gifting of substances that might contain things like smelly oils, alcohols, etc. Being clear about what that is when you give it to somebody. Hugs, a lot of burners are huggers, and there's some non-verbals that go on there, but being aware that someone might not want to be hugged, and depends on how they're feeling that day. Who's been in a situation where they really didn't actually want to be hugged and someone went in for a hug? Yeah, I've been there. It's weird. It's not okay. What about spankings too? That's another thing that we see, other kinds of forms of physical touch that might be a little more forceful. And then finally, sexual activities. All of that is in the realm of consent, and there's also more that I could talk about. But so what is consent? This is one definition. There's a lot of really great definitions. I had to pick one. It's a clear and unambiguous agreement expressed outwardly through mutually understandable words or actions to engage in a particular thing. And it's mutually understood. It's not one way, hey, I want to do this. I don't care or know if you want to do it too, but because I'm going to want to do it, we're going to do it. It's both ways. Both people are on the same page. What it isn't, sexy costumes or nudity is not consent. It's not grounds to touch someone, grab someone. It's not permission just because someone is revealing part of their body that you or someone else gets to touch that part of their body. Being drunk, it's not consent. Nonverbal cues are not consent. This one's tough, and it's easy to misinterpret nonverbal cues. I might think someone's flirting with me, but they're just a really friendly person. And then, it's just not, it's really tough. If you know someone really well and you have an established relationship, okay, you're in different territory, but especially with new folks, nonverbal cues are not consent. Passivity or not resisting is not consent. I could go on about this for a while and about our fight or flight response and how some people, they freeze. They don't fight, they freeze, and they become passive. That's like a deer in the headlights. That's that feeling. Other people appease. That's like how if someone's kind of coming after you or coming at you in a way that you don't like, you just kind of are like, okay, sure, all right, fine. You just want to get it out of your face, so you appease them to make them go away. And other folks disassociate. It's like a possum in the road playing dead. I disassociate whenever I'm in a situation that I'm really uncomfortable with or I feel unsafe, and I check out of my body. And so passivity or not resisting, that can be someone actually in a trauma state, someone who's going through something and they can't actually move, they're frozen, they're scared. It's not consent. You have to be really clear, it's not consent. And silence is not consent. Same thing, same thing. So I want to talk a little about enthusiastic consent here. The Bureau of Erotic Discourse does really great trainings, and they use this model as well. Ask first. Be open to hearing no. This requires some confidence a little bit to be able to hear that no, to truly ask. And if that person doesn't want to do that, respectfully saying, yeah, okay, you don't want to do that. All right, we're good. Communicating, talking, communicating. Being honest with yourself and with someone else about whether you really want to do this or not, being honest with yourself and being able to tell someone no. But it goes both ways. That's why silence isn't consent either. You have to get that mutually understood agreement. And talk about what you really want. This is where it can get a little sexy if you want it to. Talk about what you really do want. And talk about what you want to avoid. What do you not want to do? All right, so I also have some resources that we're going to hand out. Stuart, can you mind helping me kind of getting these out all around? So the communications team and other folks have put together a new resource about what to do if sexual assault happens in your camp. And unfortunately, this does happen in Black Rock City. It's awful, and you may have already been in this position where someone's come to you having experienced something like this, or because you're leaders, you may be in that position one day. And so we're passing out this resource. Dom's going to link it virtually, and we're going to provide it with you with a virtual copy of it afterwards so you can make copies. I recommend you put this into your camp binder if you have that, some kind of paper resource when you're on the playa. And what it goes through is who to go to, what happens when you report this. That can be really helpful for somebody who's just gone through something to know what's going to happen next, what's going to be the next step. And it also has some hotlines and other information that you can share with your campers. So this is a resource for you, for your camp, to help when you're in that situation that no one wants to be in. And finally, what can you do? Okay, share these resources with your camp. Definitely do that. Start a conversation with your camp. How consensual of an environment are we? How are we doing with both our campers and our interactivity? Contact the Bureau of Erotic Discourse for on-playa workshops. They do great on-playa workshops. They'll come to your camp and do a consent training. Think about both the sides of things, your campers and your interactivity. And one thing I wanted to bring up too is that, well, raise your hand if your camp has some kind of formal or formal-ish agreement of what kind of behavior is okay or not okay for campers to engage in. I see like maybe 15% or so. Pardon? No smoking? Yeah, well, this is interesting. So the regionals, like I said, they've been struggling with this, and so there's been a big movement of talking and figuring out codes of conduct for folks who participate in regionals and conduct committees. So what happens when someone reports an issue? Where does it go? Who do they talk to? How is that taken? How, what happens next? All of that is really complicated in communities of our nature. And so the Burning Man organization has also built on that and taken a lot of the knowledge that's been cultivated in the regionals and developed behavioral standards for our staff, which has been really interesting to watch. And so I just want to put out a kind of question around what would it look like if we shared more of these resources, of the things that we're doing in our camps to ensure that we have behavior that's appropriate and tolerable, and that having that as a backup when something goes wrong, which is kind of the helpful part of it, is if someone signed something that said they weren't going to hurt somebody else or do these types of things, and then they do them, you have some kind of thing to hold back to them. So I want to invite us to kind of have a wider community conversation. I'm just seeing what's going on in our larger culture and seeing what has already been happening with regionals. This is already an issue, and it could become an even bigger issue within our theme camp communities in Black Rock City. So let's start that conversation proactively and look at our camps and look at how we're doing things and educate our campers so that we and the thousands of Black Rock City citizens that we represent can do better on this front and make Black Rock City a safer place. That's what I got on consent. Thank you.